welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley speaking to you once again from Washington, D.C., but I am back from a press tour of the war zone near Donetsk in the Donetsk People's Republic. 72 hours in that city. It is not besieged, but it is close to the fighting front. Fighting front about 10 to 12 kilometers north and northwest of the city. And I was certainly in an area where you could hear the chatter of the machine guns and the wump-bop of the mortars and the thud of the 150 millimeter guns being used by the Ukrainian fascist army. And that's the first finding. To put it all in perspective, there is the Minsk II Accord. Who is violating the Minsk II Accord? I will tell you as an eyewitness, it is the Ukrainian forces, the pro-Kiev forces, the ones we refer to here in their proper name as the Ukrainian fascist forces. So here it is now the afternoon of Friday the 24th of April, and I'm talking about a tour that lasted Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the previous week. I can tell you that if you were in the Oktyabrskaya, October Revolution, Oktyabrskaya neighborhood of Donetsk, again on the northwest side of the city, if you were there on Thursday, the 16th of April in the morning, you would have heard plenty of firing coming from the Ukrainian lines. So who is violating Minsk II? Kiev and its fascist satellites are violating Minsk II. Now we'll try to give you an impression of what this looks like on the ground. But the big news is something else. It's the policies of the Donetsk People's Republic. It is a people's republic. It is the product of a mass strike carried out by the middle class with a prominent role for industrial workers, coal miners in particular, who make up the backbone of the local economy. Donetsk is, of course, a coal mining town, and the same holds true for this entire Donbass area, formerly Ukraine. Now, I think on its way to being an independent country, the Donetsk People's Republic. And all over the horizon, whenever you're driving around in this Donetsk Oblast, as it had been in Soviet times, that this area, you can see these slag heaps all over. Some of them look like they're about as big as South Mountain, just north here of Washington, D.C. Some of them look like the pyramids, but wherever you are, you're always going to see these slag heaps, the ash and other byproducts from coal mining on the horizon. So the big headline, though, and I think in this I am giving you a scoop in terms of the international press coverage. Certainly nothing that I have seen has done justice to it. There is a social revolution going on in Donetsk. The Donetsk People's Republic is obviously not bound by the International Monetary Fund. They're not members. They're not bound by the World Trade Organization. They're not bound by any of these globaloni, financier-dominated institutions, and they are making the most of it. And I would like to focus, without further ado, on what I regard as the centerpiece of this entire tour. It was a conversation which I had along with the group that I was with. The group that I was with included people from Italy, from the Czech Republic, from Canada, actually two from Canada, a guy from the Netherlands, and some others. This was organized with the help of Europa Objektiv, that is a website that presents the Russian case primarily to a German audience. But they made this possible. My gratitude to them is great. And here's what we found. We had the occasion to meet with a guy that you've got to get to know. His name is Boris Alexeyevich Litvinov, Litvinov. Now, you remember, if you're historically inclined, as we try to be here, Maxim Litvinov was the foreign minister of the USSR, of the Soviet Union, different times in the 1930s. Boris Alexeyevich Litvinov. Now, who is Litvinov? Litvinov is just the Thomas Jefferson of his country. He's the guy who wrote, or at least drafted, he assembled the final draft of the Declaration of Independence of the Donetsk People's Republic. And he is a highly interesting figure. For a while there, he was prime minister of the country, and he remains, I believe, a member of the Council of Ministers, and he seems to be at the leading edge of a series of economic reforms which are being adopted by the Donetsk People's Republic under the gun of military necessity, to be sure, but also in a way that may be full of promise and portent for the Russian Federation, for other areas, and maybe for the world. Let's get into it. So, again, it was on the night of April 6th to April 7th last April, that a committee was formed in the area, and it included three people: Litvinov, along with Cherkashin and Purgin. These were the three. It's a little bit like the committee we had here, right? Thomas Jefferson, along with Benjamin Franklin, and so forth. So it was, however, Litvinov who stayed up all night and wrote the draft. So he is, in some ways, the father of the country. Now, the current president was actually elected by a vote, and that's Zakharchenko. So we'll get to him in a minute. But let's get to the meat of the economics. You go in and meet Litvinov, and he's a guy in a business suit with a tie. Let me point out that what you read about the formation of the DNR or DPR, Donetskaya Narodnaya Respublik, or Donetsk People's Republic, on Wikipedia, we say this entity was declared on 7th of April 2014 by a group of armed and masked militants led by Igor Girkin, who was occupying the regional administration. This is a monstrous distortion. This was declared by a committee of, I think, very cultured and very experienced administrators and government officials going back to the Soviet era. They had seen these transitions, and they carefully checked the precedents under international law to make sure that their Declaration of Independence conformed, as much as possible, to the outlines that were given by the United Nations and others. So now you go in and meet this very affable Boris Litvinov. So what does he start telling you? He says, first of all, you have to understand that the basis of our state building, the construction of the new Donetsk People's Republic, is on the basis of a firm rejection of the fascist ideology. Actually, he says national fascist ideology, which dominated and dominates the Maidan or Euro-Maidan movement, the forces that continue to rule in Kiev. So they are anti-fascist, and that's just the beginning. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C., reporting on my visit last week to the Donetsk People's Republic, where I met the foreign minister, the information minister, and I believe a member of the Council of Ministers, but certainly an important leader in the parliament of the country, and that is Boris Alexeyevich Litvinov, who seems to be one of the decisive people in terms of the economic policy. He's preparing a document, and let me appeal right now. For those who can, please start monitoring the news reports coming out of this area in Ukrainian and or Russian, because they're going to release this economic policy document soon, if it hasn't already happened. And this is something that the world has to find out about. And I propose, since I've got the basis now, to continue reporting about this. So keep monitoring my Twitter feed. I will be catching up now over this weekend with a large number of Twitters so that we can get this very interesting word out. So Litvinov says, first of all, the basis of the new Donetsk People's Republic is the firm rejection of the national fascist ideology, which is the essence of the Kiev Maidan, the Kiev government, the Poroshenko, Yatsenyuk, Yarosh monstrosity taking shape there in Kiev. This includes the resolute rejection of Russia as an enemy image. No Russian enemy image. Kein russisches Feindbild. It is excluded. Rather, this is a government which wants to give priority to the development of infrastructure. Infrastructure. They're already million miles ahead of a lot of people here in the West. The basis of the new government is the development of the economy and the infrastructure. They formally reject the organization of the economy according to oligarchical principles. No oligarchy, says Litvinov. That will not be tolerated, has not been tolerated. And they reject the neoliberal ideology. Neoliberalism is formally rejected. So no to national fascism, no to oligarchy, no to neoliberalism, and instead an emphasis on infrastructural development. Now, perhaps the most dramatic, they have nationalized the banking system of the country. Every bank has been seized by the authorities. All banks are now under the control of the Donetsk People's Republic. Now, that's probably more than just about any place else in the world has been able to accomplish up to now. And some of these are being kept open. I think it's fair to say that even Donetsk, like many places in the former Soviet Union, is overbanked. So a lot of these branch banks are being shut down. But the bank that belonged to Kolomoisky, the oligarch, the neo-feudal boyar, I guess, who has been causing so much trouble. I think he's on the run right now. They've kept that open for the purpose of paying pensions and social benefits. So the dynamic was that the Kiev fascist regime decided to cut the payment of pensions. They said, well, we're not going to pay pensions to you people out there in those rebellious areas. So the government in Donetsk has now said, we're going to force the Kolomoisky Bank to start paying these pensions and other benefits. And I have pictures, and I am an eyewitness of the lines of people crowding around the offices of this one bank, several, many branches, but one banking logo that were kept open in order to pay these pensions. So it is the banking system practically at the disposal of the people. So banks nationalized. That's pretty good for starters. I hope you will agree. Litvinov points out that the economic policy they have been developing has been done in cooperation with two economic institutes in Moscow. And I hope to find out more about those economic institutes in Moscow, because I think they may be regarding the Donetsk-Donbass as a laboratory for new programs that can actually be applied inside Russia. That's just a guess that I have. So Litvinov says, we do not deny private initiative. There's plenty of room for individual entrepreneurs. However, it will be according to criteria established by the government, by the state. So this amounts to what we've been preaching here for many a moon. It is dirigism. Dirigism is being installed in the Donetsk and other areas. So what does this look like? First of all, the state control of national resources. It means in particular that there's a large coal mining industry, and Litvinov talked about the intentions that they have to develop this coal mining industry further. It simply shows if you are a left liberal Malthusian mushhead here in the United States, you are painting yourself out of world history, because the things that you think are important are not the ones that are important out there in the real world. Coal. I saw a newspaper headline, there will be coal. Yes, there will be coal. There will be economic survival. And that, of course, requires its own infrastructure. It requires repairs to the existing infrastructure. As Litvinov said, they need rail development. They've got to develop their railroads, and they need rolling stock. They need gondola cars and other rolling stock, other railroad cars, freight cars, because so many have been destroyed in the fighting unleashed by Kiev starting last spring and last summer. However, this government is determined to do one of the most basic things that any government should and must do. Be the world leader in something. Be the world leader in some area of high-tech, high energy density, high capital intensity production. And Litvinov says for the Donetsk People's Republic, it is machine tools that are connected to coal. Machine tools used for coal mining. And they propose to become the world leader in that area through exports. And they have already received delegations from China and Vietnam interested in buying the world-class technology which Donetsk has in this area. So machine tools and the coal mining industry. They also have significant capabilities in the construction area, right? Civil engineering and building all kinds of things. They are talking to German companies about expanding that. One of the things he also pointed out is there's a shortage of bricks, and I mean ceramic bricks. So it's the bricks that a bricklayer would lay down. There's also news about the BRICS Bank, but right now he's talking about bricks. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio program recorded here on the 24th of April 2015. Just back from the war zone in Donetsk People's Republic, and reporting on the economic revolution going on in this small part of Europe, which nevertheless happens to be the one area where you don't have the European Union, you don't have the World Trade Organization, you don't have the IMF, you don't have the World Bank, you don't have any of that, and you can then go ahead and write your own ticket. So the nationalization of the banks, the government control over natural and national resources and energy, as we've just been going through it. Energy in general, electricity is under government control. It has been de facto nationalized. There will be due process, but for the moment it is responding to the imperatives, the directives given by the government in Donetsk. And similarly for the natural resources, coal is being revived, and that is one of the key tasks of the government. By the way, Litvinov said Royal Dutch Shell came by and they wanted to take over our coal industry, and the answer was no. And Hunter Biden came by and he wanted, or his emissaries, he wanted to take over the coal industry, and the answer was no again. Now, the other area, of course, coal is one thing. The black in the Donetsk flag, as he said, the black can be one of two things if you want. It can be coal, tremendous coal area, one of the great coal mining areas of the world, always with these, at the top of the mine shaft, these large wheeled contraptions that control the elevators up and down and so forth. So one side is coal, the other is the Black Earth region, either among the best agricultural areas in the world, or maybe the best agricultural area in the world, is the Ukrainian Black Earth region. When you drive around, you can see how black and rich that earth is. So what's going on there? It's something beyond an agricultural cooperative, not an agricultural cooperative, although in many ways similar, but he said it can be compared to a collective farm, a kolkhoz, that some people have decided to go into this cooperative plus mode in order to increase agricultural production. So the fascinating topic, right? We're hoping for updates on all of this when we get that critical economic report of the government, which, as he said, is needed so that the average person can understand what's going on. Now, at the other end of the food chain, supermarkets, right? Retail sales of food. They have proudly opened their first state-controlled supermarket. You can see what's going on here is the creation of a state sector, not wiping out the private sector, but supplementing it and competing with it, as the people would say. So the state supermarket, I've been in it. It's beautiful. It's clean. It's new. It's shiny. It is well stocked with everything. And I hope my pictures came out. We'll take a look at that as soon as I get a chance. But I had lunch based on what I bought in the Donetsk People's Republic first opened state supermarket. So a state sector there also. Now, all this with the help of these two institutes in Moscow that we would hope to determine. Unions. Unions are important. The unions are heavily represented in the parliament. One factor, I think, is part of the representation is according to economic and social organizations that are assigned representation, and the unions are represented there. There is a minimum wage. As he said, it's very low, but it's better than the Kiev minimum wage. So no matter what you might say about the insufficiency, as Litvinov himself agreed, the insufficient minimum wage in Donetsk People's Republic is still better than the minimum wage in Kiev. Now, a currency reform is underway, and I believe, if my pictures come out, I have a picture of, what he called, it's not a monetary unit. He calls it a currency token, valutny znak, the znak, right, a symbol. But I would say token. There's a bit of a problem translating this because it is something new. Anyway, they have this new monetary symbol, this new currency token. So people out there who are concerned about monetary reform, there's something for you too. So let's also talk about some really fundamental things. In this world of cultural pessimism and historical pessimism, the government in Donetsk has thrown aside Malthus and his odious doctrines, and they have embarked on a policy of population growth, and they say it loud and clear. So according to Litvinov, at the end of the Soviet Union, the population of the Donetsk Oblast province was about 5 million people, and by the time we got to, say, 2012, 2013, before the big troubles started, it was about 4 million. So Litvinov says we have to promote population growth. One of the other projects, of course, is to recover the areas of the Donetsk and indeed the Lugansk oblasts, which have been taken over by the fascists, right? In other words, to kick them off the territory of the old two oblasts there. But that's only the beginning. But in any case, you've got to have population growth. So the word is that the government is going to encourage family formation, encourage marriage, and encourage procreation. And family values will be backed up by economic facilitations, right, to encourage and make possible the population growth. And the target is they would like to see 3 children per family. 3 children per woman, I guess, would be another way to put it, to stimulate. And as I pointed out, I said, this is the language of General de Gaulle. General de Gaulle said 100 million Frenchmen. It's called le natalisme, natalism. Abraham Lincoln has elements of it in some little-known writings. But the population has to be increased. And he talks in the rigorous scientific category, and this is right from his own lips, expanded reproduction. One of the keys to my economics and any decent economics is you've got to account for and stimulate the expanded reproduction of society. And that means all the inputs, all the economic inputs that go into making up the standard of living of a population. They reject the social Darwinist struggle for survival. They don't want any part of that. They have an ambitious program which will avoid the pitfalls of Malthusianism and neoliberalism. And again, the moment of dirigism, state control, it's a highly regulated approach. Let's see. The currency element is also there. So you get the idea of, in the middle of this emergency, but taking advantage of the relatively free hand that is there, they're moving in industry, in infrastructure, in the mining sector, in the black earth area. They're promoting machine tool building. You get the idea of a comprehensive and ambitious program, which it is our responsibility to support. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So we've been giving you a summary of a very important meeting with Boris Alexeyevich Litvinov of the government of the Donetsk People's Republic, the Thomas Jefferson of the country, the guy who stayed up all night drafting it. It was not some gang of thugs, but it was some people who have, I think, very advanced concepts of economics, and in business suits, white shirt and tie, to quiet the yelping detractors on the side of that Kiev fascist regime. So, trade unions getting their due. It's very, very different. So, here's what Litvinov says. What's your message to Obama? He was asked. He said, well, we want a negotiated settlement here. We'll talk about what that might be in just a second. But the negotiated settlement is something you can't have if you've got foreign troops on your territory. And we know now that the U.S. Military is not just in western Ukraine, that Lvov area, but they're all the way to Mariupol and other areas in the far east. There's a recipe for disaster. But Litvinov says, as long as we have foreign soldiers and foreign weapons being threatened or delivered onto our territory, there's no peace. So tell Obama, says Litvinov, tell Obama and his administration, they must give the order to Kiev to stop these military operations, that this Donetsk is not interested in submitting to the diktats of the Brussels Eurocrats and Oligarchs, but rather inclines towards the Eurasian Economic Union. So, that's Litvinov. Now, of course, we met any number of other people. One of them is a very experienced police and military police guy. He is part of the Oman tradition, highly trained. Oman played a big role in preventing a bloodbath back in 1990, 91, 92, when the Soviet Union broke apart. The Oman essentially kept it as peaceful as it could be. It's also the Spetsnaz training. So this then puts the longer term perspective into the proper framework. This is Police Commissioner Yuri, veteran of the Berkut, Berkut, the riot police. That they were betrayed, as he said. The Yanukovych refused to give the order to brush aside these armed gangs, fascists with weapons and Molotov cocktails, burning police officers alive, shooting police officers, sniping. As we've heard once in the past, 5 minutes of gunfire and Maidan fascism would have ended. So that's Yuri, and he says that Ukraine is dead. Ukraine is finished. When did that happen? Just about a year ago, on the 2nd of May, 2014, with that government building in Odessa, on the Black Sea, when 300 people, pro-Russian, pro-autonomy, anti-Kiev, anti-Maidan, when they were burned alive and shot, because a lot of them were shot, that was the end of Ukraine. Ukraine died that day, and there's no going back. And this is, I think, the general idea of most of the people you talk to, be it in Moscow. We had a one-day series of excellent briefings from members of the Общественная Palata, that is to say the civic chamber or civic forum of the Russian Federation. It is a representative and advisory body. A lot of them said the basis of any coexistence inside the same state of Lugansk and Donetsk on the one hand and the Lvov on the other, this is simply impossible. So we're going towards a two-state solution for Ukraine. And again, there's no reason to get particularly upset about that. It is a completely artificial country assembled under the guidance of Hindenburg and Ludendorff in 1918. And the fact Donetsk being put into Ukraine, an interesting quote from none other than Lenin. Lenin was the one who insisted that Donetsk would not be part of Russia, but it would be part of this new Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, which a lot of them didn't want. Let me also point out one of the other founders of the new state is Professor Baryshnikov. Professor Baryshnikov was for a number of months the rector of the University of Donetsk, obviously a very refined historian. And what he points out is there was a revolutionary process. There was a real mass strike process of the middle class, including industrial workers, that produced the new state. And he points out the revolution was the work of the young, I guess we'd say millennials, and older people, right? Post-war, baby boomers, if you must. And the group in the middle, I guess we'd say Generation X, waited. He quoted Chekhov saying, the intelligentsia is always very prudent. They wait to see who's going to win before they become engaged. So it's the young, the student generation, and the older generation. This important sociological model that he develops in this. And Baryshnikov also believes that there is no basis for the existence of a future federal state. And he's also adamant that all of the territory up to the old oblast border should be included. Now, there were people who were somewhat undisciplined, like Strelkov, as he talked about, right? The Western media focused very much on this guy, Strelkov, last summer. But these people have tended to recede into the background. You now have a state structure emerging under Zakharchenko and generals, right? One of the main generals, Comrade Motorola, who is directing this defense. Now, we'll have much more to say about this later in the broadcast, I hope, and then in future broadcasts. But what's going to happen? A lot of people expect there'll be spring offensive by the Kiev fascists, right? Remember that the classic position of the Donetsk forces is the defensive, but of course from time to time with counterattacks, because you have to, right? There's no other way to do it. So as we were driving back from Donetsk back to Rostov-on-Don inside Russia, I counted 6 Russian military convoys headed west towards the Ukrainian or Donetsk border area. We have this anniversary, May 2nd, of the burning of the 300 victims, anti-Maidan, anti-fascist people in Odessa. That is likely to trigger something on the part of Kiev. And then, of course, the May 9th, 70th anniversary of the victory of the Soviet Union in the Great Patriotic War, itself the central event of the Second World War on a world scale. Unlikely that Poroshenko and company will allow that to pass without some kind of an event. And I would also, in the limited time we have, check up the article How to Avert a Nuclear War by General James E. Cartwright of the U.S. side and General Vladimir Dvorkin, D-V-O-R-K-I-N, April 19th, 2015, here in the New York Times. They point to the fact that you can have first strike, you can then have launch on warning or launch under attack, or second strike, retaliation only. And we're unfortunately now in a much less regulated, more deregulated area in all of this than we were under the Cold War. The danger of the launch on warning, use them or lose them, is that it puts the hair trigger on nuclear war. So it's time for the Obama administration to end this lunatic drill, pull out the advisors, and end the presence of U.S. military forces in Ukraine. Back in a minute. Welcome back to the second hour now of the World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Now, last week we had, I think, a very comprehensive review of the Greek situation over recent years. This time we want to talk to Michael Chiotinis in Athens. We've just had the International Monetary Fund spring meetings here in Washington, D.C. Greek Finance Minister Varoufakis was here. There were various things going on. So let's get the view from Athens on all of that. Michael, welcome.
Hello. And this is another week with the euro in crisis. I think you should call it the Euro Crisis Radio. There are rumors being circulated once again that the European Commission, some big European countries, blah, 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 are all preparing and making their plans to deal with a Grexit. Now, the press is referring to strange new words all the time, if you've noticed. They're talking about a Grexit, a right. Grexident, or Grexident, several of these types of words. Now, what we should make of this, I think, clearly, is that these rumors are deliberately vague, and these strange words are an attempt to cover up the fact that there is no chance whatsoever that Germany, for instance, unfortunately represented by this finance minister Schäuble, will try and push Greece to leave the euro. So they're talking about some kind of default or event, but not clearly talking about an exit from the eurozone, because they're beginning to understand that Greece is willing to go to a default, and of course secretly no one wants a Grexit anyway, except some speculators.
And again, the default is mainly at the expense of Deutsche Bank, the institution that controls the German government through this talking puppet Merkel.
Yes. Now, let me note here, once again, because this is a big deal in the international media, that this is emphatically not a matter of Greece versus Germany. It's a matter of German and Greek parasites, oligarchies, against working people, both Greek and German. By the way, there are strong elements inside Greece. There's a corrupt oligarchy that is now ready to offer, once again, earth and water to Greece's lenders in order to save itself. Hold on to power, get rid of this threat that is this new government for them. Now, many say that the Europeans or the Germans are ready to kick the Greeks out of the Eurozone. First of all, that is insane as an idea. A country kicking out another country. I don't know where they get the nerve to say these kind of things. And second of all, how can we seriously believe and suggest that a minimum wage hike or a small bonus to Greek pensioners, poor Greek pensioners, can be the reason for a complete change in the economic and strategic direction, which is the euro, having to do with the heart of German policy, foreign policy, and financial policy. That said, the ruling elites, on the one hand, can't afford losing the common currency, but on the other hand, they also can't tolerate any government differentiating from the policies they want to impose. Because what's the common currency good for, as they see it, as if not for using it as a tool for political domination. And right now, they simply don't want to change the things, the way things are being run, because things are going well for them. Now, what's Greece's financial situation having to do with what you said on the IMF, about the IMF? Bond maturities are coming up. In fact, have already come to pass, and the funds that were supposed to have been given to Greece to meet the payments haven't come. These are loan installments from the previous contract or loan or bailout deal, whatever you want to call it, that had to be paid by the lenders to Greece already in last October. But in order to get this money, Greece was supposed to have completed another round of austerity and all these things. Actually, they went to elections before taking these measures precisely to ensure as little electoral humiliation as possible, talking about the previous government.
For some or us.
For some or us. So the new government hasn't had new money coming in at all. And we're not talking here about money the government needs to function. We are talking about bonds that need to be repaid. In other words, once again, Greece can roll over its debts. Now, the fact that Greece hasn't defaulted yet is because the government is doing an exceptional job fixing the government revenue mechanism, and that they're actually paying back debts without rolling them over to new debts. I can't recall any country in the world that has ever done this. So they are taking money out of the economy to pay back the IMF. Are they doing this, or is this a game? And you might think that's crazy, right? I mean, isn't the whole idea of an anti-austerity populist government not to squeeze people to pay back its lenders? I think there's a political game being played here that is much more complex. And it's a risky analysis, but I have an analysis on this. The German finance minister Schäuble, I think, is interested in the humiliation of this government. When I say Schäuble, I mean I'm referring to the figurehead, okay, the frontman.
Right.
Now, Schäuble is interested in humiliating the Greek government that had the audacity to challenge the way things are being run. What is that Schäuble doesn't want? He doesn't want a precedent being set that European countries can govern themselves and elect whomever they want to elect. Well, what is that Schäuble also doesn't want? He doesn't want to overthrow Tsipras in a way that will make him a hero. Now, what does he actually want? It is to either make Tsipras bow to his will, surrender to austerity and humiliate him in the eyes of the Greek people, and then overthrow him, or to humiliate him in any other way he can, and then get rid of Syriza and all this. Now, a Greek default triggered by an inability to pay back European institutions would make it seem like the Europeans have declared war against the Greek government. Politically, it's very difficult. But up until June, the only money that Greece needs to pay back is to the IMF, and which is considered to be inside the U.S. sphere of influence, with the current U.S. administration somewhat more friendly towards Greece. What Greece is currently trying to do is, firstly, agree on a reform package without the austerity, and secondly, start a discussion on how Europe needs to confront its own structural problems. It would be a godsend for Schäuble if Greece was to default on the IMF. In other words, fail to pay back money to the IMF, because that would begin a process of panic, capital flight, humiliation, with the Europeans blackmailing Greece, as they did with Cyprus, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And indeed, that is what was probably being planned for a long time by Schäuble in cooperation with recently fallen government in Greece. All this gives me the feeling that a Greek default is part of the plan, but they're trying to make the IMF to make the IMF responsible for it. In other words, make the IMF look bad. The only question is whether the Greek government could find a way to continue paying back to the IMF in May and June. In other words, June is the turning point.
Okay, so Schäuble wants to blame it all on the IMF. We'll be following it. Thank you, Michael. We'll see you next week. Great work as always. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. Now we're going to get a report from Reverend Edward Pinkney, who is still a prisoner of the Rick Snyder regime in Michigan. Reverend, can you hear me?
I can hear you quite well.
Reverend, I got to ask you to do me a favor now. I was traveling last week, and I need you to bring me up to speed on what happened in that hearing last week and where we go from here. And I think some of our listeners also need to be updated. So please go ahead.
Absolutely, Webster. Absolutely. Listen, on April the 14th, we went into the courtroom. We were slinging our pistols, and our pistols was loaded. And my attorney, I felt, took a dive, but unfortunately, we got enough in to get something done. The judge denied my request for a new trial, and I kind of like anticipated that because he had some information. Why would he give me a new trial if he already had that information? But here's the kicker. He's attempting to extort money from me. He wants to give the mayor almost $1,800 of my money, which is strictly extortion. That's what it is. This judge, he has no integrity. He's dishonest, but yet still, this is going to take the people to take a change. But here's where we're going with this. We should have, if things work out, if we raise another additional $1,500, we are going to have the transcript not next week, but the following week. And then we can go straight into the appeal court. So we're trying to do some stuff right now. We're working on it, and we're trying to make sure to get to the appeal court. We should have been in the appeal court, but unfortunately, we didn't have the money to get the transcript and all that kind of stuff. But we're there now. We're just one step away from getting this transcript and moving this thing to a whole different level. But the fight continues. We're not giving up. We decided that the move that they have been making, the things that they have been doing is just almost unheard of. But this is what they do. Here I am. I'm in prison now, and some of these ghost stories that I have been hearing is almost enough to scare you. And it tells you about our system. You see, and here's what I do. See, I'm speaking out against this corruption in this system, but I'm not angry. I'm not even, with anxiety or sorrow in my heart. Above all, this is a passionate desire to see our beloved country stand as a moral example of the world. I believe that the unarmed truth and unconditional love will have a final word in reality. That's why right now temporary defeat is stronger than evil triumph. It's not one thing that's bothering me. It's everything in this country. So we have to move this thing to a different level, show people what we're capable of doing. But, here's the biggest thing. We have to come together and fight this monster because it's getting worse now than ever before. They want to put everybody in prison. They're expecting over 3 million people to be in this prison system by the year 2020. I'm saying 3 million. This is what they were telling me the other day. They say they're going to get 3 million. They say it's right now it's over 2.5. And they say they expect it to get worse before it gets better. But that's because the people are silent. They're not speaking up. They're not saying and doing the things that they need to be done. So we need everybody help Webster. We need people who have never done nothing before in their life to come step to the plate. And everybody can do something. Everybody. See, everybody thinks that, that they can't do it. I don't care if you're living in Mexico. You could be living in Toronto. You can do something. So we must stand together, Webster, and fight this monster and win this battle. And I know we can.
And Reverend, let me make it concrete for people, right? The obvious thing, many ways you can help, but one of the most basic to get the money for the transcript and the basis of the appeal, you have to go to bhbanco.org. So it's Benton Harbor Black Autonomy Network of Community Organizations.org. Look a little bit over to the right and down, scroll down a little bit, and you'll see a PayPal. And you can make a contribution there from just about anybody, any place in the world, as far as I can see. So bhbanco.org, $1,500 still needed for a transcript. Reverend, let's just go backwards. Now, this guy, Sterling Schrock, the judge,
yes,
right, about to go into his new retirement job and promoted and everything. He's trying to get $1,800 in damages from you because you dared to activate a recall, which is legally provided for, against the mayor of Benton Harbor. Have I got that right?
You are absolutely correct. He's claiming that this man had a nervous condition and he had to take off 1 day of work. They was trying to get $7,000 from me. They was working together, the prosecutor, the judge, and this sleazeball mayor. We was going to put him on the stand. They wouldn't even let him come on the stand because they knew that he was going to lie, and we'll catch him in a lie. That's why he never came to court. But it's what amazed me more than anything else that we was in there, even without my attorney. I had already made all the notes, all the questions I wanted him to ask, because he was so unprepared that I had to write those questions out, and they brought me there. But here's something else. I need someone who's listening to this show today to file an amicus brief for me on this. I'll get him all the information he needs, but I need someone to file an amicus brief. They can call my wife at 269-925-0001. That's 269-925-0001. We want someone out there, as many people as possible, to file an amicus brief to show these people that what they was doing was wrong. And the only way we're going to beat them down, we must pull this thing together. We must learn to stand together, fight together, and deal with this monster, because I tell you, it's going to get worse before it gets better unless we wake up and figure we got to help. Everybody can help. Everybody can do something. So we need people willing to go beyond the call of duty and do something. Also, to make sure we get that transcript, I need that transcript, and those who out there who can't help, please help, because we got to have resources in order to fight this battle. And we're up against a real monster, and we just have to do what we need to do. And this is what we can do. We can win this thing. I'm guaranteeing a victory. I'm guaranteeing the victory when this thing is all over with. And what we're going to do, we're going to show them how corruption actually exists inside this system. Because I look at this as an opportunity more than anything else to expose a corrupt system. When you have a judge who normally could not even tell you what the evidence was, he couldn't even say what the evidence was. The prosecutor couldn't say what the evidence was. Now, here I am sitting in prison, have to eat this food and be separated from my wife. And today is my wife's birthday. The day her birthday, April 24th. And here's something else, that this is the anniversary of the SWAT team coming to my home. So it's the anniversary.
Okay, Reverend, we've run out of time, but we need an amicus curiae brief or more than one. And it's 269-925-0001. I'll repeat that in the next hour. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, we want to go and get some insights into the British election campaign. The entire House of Commons, the entire Parliament, in other words, is up for a vote later next month in May. And we're, as you know, supporting the candidacy of Stuart Hooper, an independent candidate in Essex, for the House of Commons. And remember, all those other parties, they're either for fiscal and wage austerity, or if they're leftists, they're in favor of energy austerity. So this is the only true anti-austerity candidacy in sight, except to the extent that he's going to be imitated, as I feel he will be. So welcome to Stuart Hooper, the candidate for the House of Commons. Welcome, Stuart.
Hi, Webster. Thanks for having me back on the show. So over the past week, thanks to your listeners mainly, I was able to fund the printing of 43,000 leaflets. That's the total number needed to hit every single property in my district with one piece of election mail, which is a nice little leaflet detailing all of the main points of the campaign. So big thanks to everybody who helped support the creation and printing of that leaflet. So if you go
has that gone out? Has it already been mailed, or is it in process? Where do we stand?
I took it to the distribution centre today, and it will be mailed out next week, so the week before the election. So it's perfect timing, really. And
okay, and remind us, when is the vote?
The 7th of May.
The 7th of May.
Yes.
Congratulations. So there's an important programmatic statement. More content there than in the entire rest of the election campaign in Scotland, England, and Wales, I'm sure.
Yes, if people want to go and see the leaflet, if you go to my Facebook page, Stuart Hooper for Parliament, or facebook.com/Hooper4MP, HOOPERFORMP. I've put up a couple of videos showing the leaflet in its entirety, and also there's a few other little video diaries of my campaign which people can go and watch there as well.
All right, so as I understand it, you're getting some initial interest from media, and also you're going to take part in a policy discussion. Bring us up to speed.
Yes, so a local independent news website called Your Thurrock, they reached out and wanted to interview me, so that was nice of them. They came out to my local small town centre and did a video interview, and also published my full manifesto on their website as well. So that's the extent of the media coverage.
And is that up there? Can we go and see that?
Yes, if you go to yourthurrock.com, you should be able to find it in the politics section of that website.
Okay, and Thurrock, once again, the full title of your district is?
South Basildon and East Thurrock.
Okay. And then you're going to be appearing at the local university.
Well, this is the university that I'm currently attending. I'm a graduate student, as your long-time listeners will know, studying for a master's degree in international politics at City University London. It's in Islington. The nearest tube station is Angel, and it's just a 5-minute walk down the road from there. And yeah, I reached out to my professors, and they thought it was great what I'm doing, and obviously it's a great opportunity for them to promote the fact that they have a student who is also a candidate for Parliament. So I will be speaking on the panel of the Centre of International Policy Studies at City University London. And I will be giving a 10-minute talk on why I'm standing and what I'm standing for. And apparently it is a public event, so if anybody would like to come, please do. It starts at 6 p.m. on Thursday, the 30th of April.
So next Thursday the 30th of April at 6 p.m. at the City University branch. Do you have a street address?
Not a street address. I believe it is Northampton Square.
Okay. And it's the Center for International Political Studies and Political Studies, and the underground is Angel, right?
Yes.
Angel.
Yeah, if you go to Angel and pop out there and ask anybody, they will be able to easily direct you down the road to City University. Very easy to find.
All right. So what else? What else do we need to know? How about the evolution of some of these issues? I know you're very interested in housing. I know firsthand myself what a terrible housing market there is there. Right? There are just not enough decent places to live. You've had all kinds of people doing squatting and so forth. And how are you going to tackle that?
Yes, absolutely. Housing is a huge problem, especially in central London. That's not where I'm standing, but in London, the rates to rent or buy properties are just completely through the roof. And I saw an article earlier today, actually, accusing the government, I suppose, of social cleansing. So these prices are just so astronomical that only a very small class of people could actually afford to live in London at all. So what we need to do about that is start producing some affordable, publicly owned housing, and we need to start doing that not just in central London but all around the country as well, because there's a lot of people like myself who are just going to be graduating from university and cannot afford to move out of their parents' house because the rates are simply too high to rent or buy anywhere. That's especially true in my town as well, because we are only an hour from London, so it's like prime property for commuters. So the prices there are very high as well. So yeah, we can start looking at that increased public housing, and the way obviously we will pay for that is with the 1% City of London financial transaction tax on those financial institutions that have been responsible for the crisis, not individuals and not small businesses. And we can also look to use the Bank of England for truly national purposes and start using some of that credit creating power, not to bail out banks, but to create something positive for the people of this country.
I think it's absolutely critical. I know from having talked to people living in Bristol, right, sort of at the other end of southern England, the only way a lot of them ever got houses was by squatting and then staying there for many years. To put it mildly, the rent is too damn high, right? That was the slogan that came out of a recent New York City campaign. But it's the same idea. And if you want to have reasonable rents, it's better not to tinker with rent control and all these things. Just produce your way out of the crisis. More apartments, attractive, modern, healthful, good for children, and then the rents will come down, because it's just supply and demand, as they always say.
Absolutely. And something I've noticed recently, just watching election coverage over here, is that there is a lot of talk on what you would call process reforms. So there's a lot of talk about things like lowering the voting age, turning the House of Lords into an elected body. Well, that's great. That's what I'd be all for, turning the House of Lords into an elected body. But what is that going to do right now today for people that need this housing, for people that are starving, for people that cannot afford their day-to-day lives? So it's all well and good campaigning for those process reforms, but they're quite literally going to do nothing to help the everyday person on the street.
The unspoken premise of the process reform is that once you get all these young people and other people, then they'll vote for something good. Well, why don't we just go direct to the something good? Let's vote for the nationalization of the Bank of England and the Euro-Tobin or Keynesian 1% tax and get
Absolutely.
right to it, rather than this pie in the sky in the middle, right, which nobody can quite fathom, right? Why don't we just get down to business and make the needed reforms? Well, very good. Have we got any notable gaffes? Welcome to our final segment on this week's World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. Well, we've heard from Stuart Hooper. His election is the 7th of May, but there's another election in May. It is for county commissioner in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, the area of the Poconos, the Delaware Water Gap, Stroudsburg, maybe the largest town. And it's Adam Rodriguez running for county commissioner there. So let's get an update on the campaign from Adam Rodriguez right away. Adam, welcome.
Thank you very much, Webster. Thanks for having me on the program. I wanted to kind of get right into it and just explain and put people up to date on where I am with the campaign so that they can get an idea of what the landscape looks like right now. So we're in the middle of a primary. That's May 19th. Municipal elections in Pennsylvania are held in off years. The county commissioner holds the seat for 4 years, so it's a really ideal position for me, assuming that I want to, maybe move on from commissioner after my term. If I decide to run for state rep or Congress, I won't lose my seat, which is really great. But it also, county commissioners really have a lot of power here, in that the county's 170,000 people strong, so technically I would be representing 170,000 people. I'd be one of three. So the race right now is looking great. We have 4 people in the primary, one of which is my running mate, Andre Reams. We're running together as a team. The 2 others are, pretty much what I have seen so far. They seem to be Democrats in name only, in that they seem to be very close to some of the Republicans in the area, and they seem to be actually getting funding to some degree from some of the Republicans. I can't prove that 100%, but just by, birds of a feather tend to flock together, and that's the case here. So, I have a big fundraiser on Sunday. I am having at least 50 to 75 people coming to a hall that we rented. We have food being donated by a local Texas Roadhouse, the manager of which is a very strong Democrat who wants to see more progressive values here in the county, and one of which is minimum wage issues. He realizes that you have to pay people a decent living wage, so he's all for doing that as a franchisee or general manager of a local Texas Roadhouse Grill. So he's donating food to us. So I got the hall donated by a local civic organization, and then the food. So things are looking really good. I have.
So Adam, suppose people want to drop in. Tell us where and when and all the details so they can stop by.
That would be wonderful. I'm in Marshall's Creek, which is really north of Stroudsburg. Basically, it's East Stroudsburg, but it's called Marshall's Creek. I'm in Country Club of the Poconos, which is where I live, and the club where it's being held, it's a golf club for the local municipal golf course. It's on Big Ridge Drive. It's right off of Big Ridge Drive. I'm not sure what the actual address is, but you just follow it all the way up to the end, and you'll see signs for Whispering Pines Clubhouse, Golf Clubhouse. So that's where we're holding it, and, it's going to be from 3 to 7. Like I said, I'm expecting about 50 to 75 people, maybe more. We have food for plenty, so please come by. We're asking for, a $35 donation, but you know what? You give what you can. It's more important for me to fill this place up and make it into a party and launch the, Adam for Commissioner campaign going into the primary. I want everyone to know that I need all the help I can get. We were thinking about doing a lawn sign campaign, but that's going to be a little bit too late. So what we're going to do is turn around and use the proceeds from this and do a mailer. We're planning on using a very targeted list from the Democratic priority software they use to identify voters in the county here. It's called Vote Builder, and we can actually do a very targeted mailer to around 2,000 to 4,000 people. That's going to be, a very personalized letter appealing to people to come out and vote for me. To win the primary, I need at least 1,500 to 2,000 votes. And if I can do that, I'll go to the general, and the two candidates that come out of the primary that we put up as Democrats into the general election will then go up against the two Republicans, and there's no independents, unless there's a write-in at this point, but there's no independents. And, you know, the thing that I wanted to stress as a candidate is that, yes, I'm running as a Democrat, but really I'm bringing to the table a whole set of ideas that a lot of the Democrats around here really aren't aware of, and that's the idea of national banking and a very progressive tax structure kind of highlighted. And, you know, the jewel in the crown is the 1% Wall Street sales tax. And people love the idea. They understand the idea of a financial transaction tax. 1% to them oftentimes seems very low, but when you put it into realistic perspective, it's a place to bargain from, you know. So, you know, I think that the idea of national banking from a commissioner standpoint is key, because assuming that we get to the point where we can have a system of national banking in this country, I'm going to be in a position where I can, you know, basically put bids out for contract in the local paper and in the local, you know, in the local economy here for great projects of major national importance. One of which is opening up the gap to rail, a significant rail, not just regular electrified rail, but high-speed rail and possibly even maglev rail is going to have to come through the gap at some point. So that type of project, a multi-trillion-dollar project, really running all the way from New York City, from Hoboken on through parts of New Jersey, on through the Gap, and then on to Scranton, are just some of the things that we can do, and that's going to be those are going to have a halo effect in terms of an economic driver throughout Northeast Pennsylvania, and I plan on being at the forefront of that. I plan on fighting for those things and using that knowledge of national banking and the history of national banking to prove to people that this has been done before. This is what you know drives my creative abilities, my ability to persuade people and teach them their history, and so they understand where we came from and where we need to be in order to get back up to speed here in Northeast PA and in the country. And I'm going to be at the forefront.
Okay, Adam, just before we run out of time, give your website and how people can contribute, and then we'll use the remaining time,
Sure.
Okay? Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, no question. Well, I mean, this is very important because I need all the funds I can get. My web address is Adam for Commissioner, Adam for Commissioner. That's ADAMFORCOMMISSIONER .com. All right, .com. And then if you want to go to my Facebook page, there's a link to my web address there where you can donate as well, and that's Adam for Commissioner, or the committee to elect Adam for Commissioner. So if you go onto Facebook, you can find those two links, and it'll take you back to my PayPal address, and you can then donate. We took care of all the glitches, and you should be able to donate no problem to my campaign. And we need everything we can get. We're going to need at least $1,500 to $2,000 for the mailer, a very targeted mailer using a bulk rate, and we're going to do a simple little postcard. I need other campaign materials. I need expenses to go to events and things like that. I mean, this is a very high-profile campaign here in the county. This is the most high-profile municipal position that's up for grabs right now.
Great. So I urge everybody, if you're within striking distance, go to the Whispering Pines event, Sunday, the 26th of April at 3 p.m. to 7.
Country Club of the Post.
And wherever you are, it's adamforcommissioner.com. And contribute through the site.
Right, exactly. You know, I think I wanted to get in a little bit and speak to what goes on here in the county and what the commissioner does.
And I'm afraid the music is telling us that we just got that done in time, because we're out of time, and those are hard breaks. So thank you very much, Adam. We'll be looking for you next week.
Thank you.
Okay. Adam Rodriguez for County Commissioner, Monroe County, Pennsylvania. And with that, we'll see you next week on World Crisis Radio.